What about women who have no self-belief, who don't think they can do it? How do you get them around it?
The first step that you have to take is to build a relationship of trust within yourself.
Why do you think your sharing is so important then? Because sharing for me is connection.
If I do not feel comfortable saying something directly to somebody, I have no right to say it to anybody else about them behind their back. That is it.
Everything starts from mindset and your belief, and then you can change your whole narrative.
For anybody, is build a relationship with yourself. Learn to trust yourself. At 15, I suffered a breakdown. I attempted to take my own life at that age.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Her Own Narrative. We have today an amazing guest with us, Louise.
Hello. Hi, so I am Louise Ann. I am a female empowerment coach and a professional speaker. And I specialise in helping women who have experienced domestic abuse and toxic relationships to take back the narrative and take back their power around their mental health.
I can see all the passion. That's absolutely amazing. First of all, I must commend that you're doing an amazing job. But where is all this passion coming from, Louise?
So I grew up in a household with my emotionally abusive father and my mother in survival mode. And so as much as she tried to do everything she could, we didn't have the resources. We didn't know what was going on or anything. We just had to survive that. When I was about 13 years old, my mum finally found the strength to divorce my father. And he went all out to destroy her. He sold the house that we were living in, so we became homeless. We got moved into emergency accommodation because I was too young to go to a women's shelter. So we were technically homeless, living in emergency accommodation, and then moving into council house. So what she did, she dedicated and she worked extremely hard, working multiple shifts at hospitals. She was a nurse, and just back-to-back shifts to try and get us through that financially. But again, it meant that I had no support for my mental health. At 15, I suffered a breakdown. I ended up becoming depressed. I attempted to take my own life at that age. I had body dysmorphia, anorexia, depression. I was self-harming in a very, very bad state. And then when I was 17, I met a man who was very similar to my father. And he showed me the only form of love I had ever known from a male. And that was it. And I was like, this is love. He loves me. Because
you weren't healed, were you?
No. But it was all I'd ever known. Everybody had told me that my father loved me. Nobody had told me that my father had been abusive. Nobody told me that he had been bullying. But they told me he loved me. So when a man came into my life and treated me the same way and belittled me and criticized me, I believed that this is love. At that time, I didn't know about emotional abuse. So I wasn't aware of that. And then the other thing, I always said that I would never tolerate being in a relationship with a man that cheated on me, because my father had cheated on my mum throughout their relationship. So those were my two things. When I found out that my husband was cheating on me, we had two young daughters. He started having his affair when our youngest daughter was 6 months old. And I found out about the affair about a week after her first birthday. So we had very young daughters. And I was like, this is it. I can't go through that. So I gave him 6 months to save the relationship because he'd had his affair at work. And so in my head, I was like, I would say to him, our relationship, our marriage isn't going to survive you working with her. So he had 6 months to find another job to prove that he wanted to save the relationship, and he never did. So I filed for divorce and I became a single mum to my two daughters. And it was about a year after that emotional abuse became illegal in the UK. So it was then 2015, and I would look, and everywhere, like in newspapers and on social media, it was these lists about coercive control, what it is, how it's showing up in relationships, how it's now illegal. And these lists were like checklists for my marriage. You know, the coercive control, the belittling, the financial control, the gaslighting, the weaponized silence, all of this, it was like a checklist. And I was like, oh, And it was after that I started to piece together what I'd experienced, what I'd learned from my parents' relationship. And I had these 2 young girls that were going to maintain a relationship with their father because legally he had a right to have a relationship with them, and I wasn't going to stand in that way. But how was I going to get them to stop the cycle? How could I teach my daughters to never enter the kind of relationship that my mother had been in, that I had been in? And it was realizing that they needed to learn a new way of being that made me realize, okay, no one else is going to teach them, so it's on me. So I started learning about the tools and techniques that I could do at home, that they would witness, that they would learn, because your children, they don't listen to you, but they will copy you.
That is absolutely right. So give me, this is so interesting. Give me an example of something like, from that mindset shift that, okay, I'm going to teach them by example.
Doing things like journaling. So in my house, I can journal. So I have journals and I will leave them everywhere. Everybody respects a journal. Nobody will ever read somebody else's journal. My daughters will come to me and they'll be like, oh, you can read what I wrote. And I'm like, no, you can read it to me, but I'm not. That is your safe space. You have your journal and I will never read it.
And how did you encourage the girls? Because I'm assuming they were very little at that point. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine. Yeah. They saw me journaling. So I would just get colouring in books.
Yeah.
And they would sit and I would do my journaling and they would want to sit at the table and be with me. And so I would be doing my journaling and they would be drawing pictures. And when they learned to start writing, they would write a sentence of today. They'd ask me and they're like, what are you doing? I'm journaling about how I feel. Today I feel happy because we went to the park. So they would start writing. And it gave them the realization that a journal could be something, could be a safe space for them, that this book, they could feed their ideas into it and it would be safe and it would be secure and they could allow their experiences and their emotions and their thoughts that they don't think they should share, they could live within this book. And so they learned that. And so just that little habit means that they will now pick up and they will write and they will process their thoughts through written word.
So in love with this idea. I mean, I journal, but
all I had to do was buy them, and you can get them so cheap. And they would draw, they would sketch, they would scribble, whatever they needed to do. But it wasn't my journal, so I had no right to control or tell them what to do. I just gave them the books.
Yeah, that just gives you the tool of respecting other people's privacy.
I can leave my journal anywhere in the house, and I know nobody will read it because we've got that understanding that is the respect that you have for other people's personal space, and your journal is your personal space. So it's that, and they've learned that, and it didn't take much work, and I didn't have to train them or teach them. I just had to give them the opportunity.
You had to do it yourself and then give them the opportunity to do it for themselves.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing.
And then other things like EFT tapping. So they know about, because they witness it. And so if you sit and you're tapping like this in front of a toddler, they will mimic.
So for viewers who don't know EFT tapping, do you want to just...
So emotional freedom technique, it is a tapping technique and it uses meridian points. So it's a bit like acupuncture. So it kind of comes from that entire ideology that we have energy points within our body. So you tap on different pressure points and you say different affirmations. So if you want to feel more confident, you can just repeat, I feel more confident. I am confident. I am a confident person. I am a confident woman. I love myself. I believe in myself. I accept myself. I feel confident. And you work through these tapping points. And it's free and it is accessible and it can work in minutes. And it is proven to be more effective than CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It is such an incredible modality, but you can do it yourself in your own life. You don't need any tools for it.
What brought you to a point where you started thinking, this is what the passion lies and this is what you want to do and this is your change, this is your narrative, you're going to own it? And
after I realised I'd always kind of been coaching, like friends, everything else, it had always been a natural thing. Speaking to people, I'd always kind of gone along those lines. When I left my husband and I became a single mum, I spoke to 2 of my friends about it. I spoke to multiple friends about it. But 2 of them then ended up leaving their unhappy marriages, and both of them credited me with them having the strength. So speaking to me about my story and what I'd gone through and how I'd actually become a single mum gave them hope and belief that they could do it too. So I ended up in a relationship with an incredible man. He was very supportive, and he had a photography studio. So we set up a photography studio together. He'd always run his own businesses, so a crewing company and multiple other things. So being an entrepreneur was very natural to him. He knew it, and when I saw him step into his love of photography and the passion that he had for his business, I wanted that too. I was a management accountant and I was counting down the hours on my day. I would draw a circle, I'd divide it up into 8, and I would colour in each section as an hour ticked by, and I was counting down my life. And he was out there and he was living his passion, and he was
enjoying his life.
And seeing him behind the camera, it was like like he'd come home to himself, and it was his happy place. And I was like, I want that. I want something that makes me feel like that. And so I started, initially I called my business Willows and Daisies, my favourite tree and my favourite flower. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to run my own business. And so I started to look for things. I was going to make photography props for newborn shoots, and I was going to sew clothes. I was going to do all of these different things. And then I went to a life coaching. There was something for life coaching that came up. And I was like, well, I'll go because they might help me find what I should be doing with my business. And then I went and I was like, I love this. I love this. I love the learning. I love the growing. I love the development. And so it just became one of those things. I was like, this is what I want to do for my business.
Why do you think your sharing is so important then? I have to ask this question because I feel passionately about it, and hence this podcast, because sharing for me is connection.
Yes. And I think that was it. My mum shared her experience with me. The reason I ended up having the belief and the courage to become a single mum was because I'd witnessed it from my mum. The reason that my friends ended up leaving the marriages when they did was because me sharing my story and my experience gave them belief that it could happen. So I know, when we form a belief, first you get an idea and then your brain looks for evidence. And when your brain has enough evidence, it then creates a belief. So if you want to believe you are capable of doing something, you need evidence of that. And you can look for that evidence within your own life, within what you've gone through and what you've done. So you can build up that evidence that way. Or you can have a look at other people's experiences and what other people have done and what other people have achieved. And you can use that to build the evidence. So you're training your brain. Like, if I want to believe that this is possible for me, I will look for evidence. And the more people that share their story, the more evidence there is out there for others to latch onto.
Correct. That's correct. Absolutely. And it's just about mindset.
And that's the thing. It's rewriting your mindset and realizing how much control you have over your own life just by taking back control of your mindset.
It's absolutely crazy.
It is. I love it.
Isn't it? Absolutely love it. Like, how much can you shift in your life just by having control over your mind?
And this is one of the reasons. So I don't coach like one-to-one coaching per se. So it's very rare that I have one-to-one clients. What I do is I teach modalities and techniques so that women can take back that control, so that they can take back that mindset. I love therapy, counseling, all of that. I've gone through so much, but it is the shifts and the changes that you make on a day-to-day basis that will transform your life.
They say lifestyle changes, isn't
exactly.
it? Yeah.
So if you're waiting for your next therapy session to be able to do something, or you're waiting to speak to your coach to be able to implement something, you are missing the entire point.
Totally
now
right.
You are in a codependent relationship with your professional. So what you need to do is you need to step back from that idea that you are in a relationship with a codependent relationship. Take back your power and say, I don't have to wait for my next appointment to make this choice, this change.
Yeah.
I can take back power every single day.
You've got enough tools to work on yourself. Totally agree. But what about women who have no self-belief, who don't think they can do it? How do you get them around it?
There is a slight nuance in having self-belief and having self-trust. If you don't trust yourself, if you've made a decision to enter into a toxic or an abusive relationship because you've ignored the red flags and you haven't followed through and you haven't gone with your instincts, then what you've done is you've betrayed yourself. And so your ability to trust yourself and make decisions then gets impaired. And so you're kind of like, okay, well, now I want to go on my healing journey, but I can't trust myself to choose the right professional, or I don't trust myself to be fixable. I don't trust myself to implement it. I don't trust myself to do the work. I don't trust myself. So the first step that you have to take is to build a relationship of trust within yourself. So,
oh my God, this is so interesting. Let me just reiterate this. So what you're saying is if we make one bad decision in our lives, or whatever, that decision didn't work in our favor.
Yes.
That actually works as a mindset belief that I don't trust myself and making the right decision. And that will show up in every single little thing, what we need to take decisions in our lives.
Yeah, so if I can't trust myself to make the right decision, if I go to a restaurant and I've got a menu of things in front, now I'm indecisive because I don't trust myself to make the right decision. So I will ask everybody at the table, what are you having from the menu? Because I can't trust myself to make the right decision. So I will give you the power of making the choice for me. It's that little nuance. And we make it worse by making a commitment to myself. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up at 5:30 and I am going to exercise and I'm going to drink a gallon of water and I am going to journal and I am going to meditate. We set these expectations for ourselves. And so we say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to do this. And then when we don't do it, our brain is basically like, you lied. You lied. You're a liar.
So if you can't trust the simple little decisions, you can't trust yourself to make such little decisions in your life, how can actually you make massive life-changing decisions? There is no way you can trust yourself to make it. And that's where I think that is absolutely incredible.
So the first thing that you need to do for anybody is build a relationship with yourself. Learn to trust yourself. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If nobody else is holding you accountable, you are holding you accountable. If you say you're going to drink the water, drink the water. If you say that you're going to do the journaling, do the journaling. If you say you're going to get up, get up.
Keep your word
to
yourself.
Keep your word to yourself as you would to somebody else. If you are going to respect another person enough to show up and honor their time, do that for you.
That's right. That's integrity, isn't it?
Yes.
That's integrity starts with yourself. If you're not showing up for yourself, if you're not keeping your word to yourself.
And when you start to trust yourself, you will then find that when you are trying new techniques, when you are trying new things, you trust yourself enough to allow it to happen. Because there is a safety. There is a belief within yourself like, okay, I can trust myself to do this. I can trust myself to do the work. And there is a safety that happens within you. And that's where you start your healing journey. You trust yourself. And because you trust yourself, you then are able to trust others to show up for you because you recognize I'm worthy and deserving of that level of treatment. And so other people will step up and they will show you that level of treatment.
Absolutely. But then, Louise, I do have a question here because, you know, what you're saying is absolutely right. What happens is when you're surrounded by people who are going to put doubts in you and your own trust starts dwindling.
Then you double down on your trust. That's where you have to. So like the first of the 4 courses is strong foundations, because I say the way that I explain it to people is you are born and you have your internal self, your authentic self, and it is like a beautiful diamond, and it is your, you know, different people call it different things, your soul, your essence, but that version of you lives within you. And as you grow up, you are told to change, to
dim your shine.
Dim your shine, soften those sharp corners. And so what you do is you ply on like layers of mud to hide, to dim, so that you can shape, because you can't shape a diamond. It's like you can't change the shape of it. But if you apply layers on yourself and hide, then you're creating a false identity in order to please people around you. So I will become who other people want me to be. I will be the person that my parents need me to be in order to maintain a relationship. I will be the person my teachers, my friends at school, my siblings, I will be who they need me to be in order to maintain these relationships. But what you're doing is you are piling on layer and layer and layer of mud, of dirt, and you are creating a distance between who everybody sees you and who you identify yourself as and who you authentically are. And when life happens, when life knocks you to the core and you think that your life is falling apart, what is happening is these layers are shedding. And that's why you feel like you're falling apart, because all of these identities that you have of yourself, of this person that you thought yourself to be, the person that you had to be in order to maintain that relationship is no longer needed. So that facade falls away and you feel, well, who am I now? The same person you always were, that authentic self that lives within you. And they are multifaceted. They can be quirky and weird while also being intellectual and creative, and they're multifaceted. A diamond has multiple different sides, and you have multiple different facets to who you are. What you need to do is connect with that diamond version of yourself and say, okay, where in my life can I relish and be that authentic version of myself and not dim it, not hide it, not pretend that it's something else? And even if you do have to maintain facades for certain relationships, because we do, that is life, that is society. But where am I going to let that facade fall so that I can reconnect with my authentic self? If I need to be professional at work, where am I going to be weird and wacky with my kids or with my friends or with my partner? Like, where am I going to let myself
let my guard down and just
Exactly.
be me?
Exactly.
Yes. Where I'm not judged for me being me.
Exactly.
Yes.
Where am I just going to allow myself to be everything I am and not have to hide behind a facade? And that's it. And so that's what you do, and that trust. So when you reconnect with that version of yourself and people come up to you and you're like, oh, well, I don't think you're capable of this. That's okay. You don't have to think I'm capable of it. I think I'm capable of it. In fact, I know I'm capable of it because my authentic self that lives within me
is capable of it. Yes.
And so
yes.
you don't need the external confirmation or validation, because they're only able to see the facades that you show them.
You're absolutely right there. But as a human, don't we all need validation? Don't we all need that sort of that's called support system, isn't it?
But it's you get to pick and choose where that validation comes from.
That's true.
So you have that power. You're like, well, if you're not going to validate that version of me, maybe it's because you haven't seen that side of my
because I've never felt safe enough to show you that part of me. But now that I am, you can't keep up with it.
Yes. Yeah. So and that's okay, because they've only been able to see a facade that you've put on. So how can they judge who you truly are if all they've ever seen is a mask that you wear?
Just before we hit the button record. We were off record. We were talking about a lot of things. We were talking about sisterhood. We were talking about why women need to share. Why should we talk about our stories? Why should we? And you said something very interesting, which actually stuck with me. And you said gossip is just gossip just sounds negative. Yeah. But it came into play for a reason.
Yeah, so it used to be when the godmothers, so at the birth of a child or at the birth, all of the women would come together, and it's like a medieval thing. So the women would come together at the birth of a child because they were the midwives and the healers and the carers, and they would come and they would share information. So it was the godmothers would share information to the children and the other women, and they would talk about new recipes or new things that they'd tried, or new healing things like new herbs that they'd tried and had worked for various things. They would educate each other and pass on the information to the next generation and to the others around them. They would talk about things to like warn them, well, be careful of that person because I saw them acting this way, and be careful of that. And so they would share information and educate each other because, and then even moving forward, women weren't allowed to be educated. So how did they pass information on to each other? It was gossip. They would get together and they would talk. They would share these ideas and this information. So then it became something that became frowned upon. It became punished. It became criticized because they wanted to isolate women and stop women from sharing the knowledge and the power that they had. Women are easier to control if they are segregated from other women. So how do you keep women ignorant? You take away their opportunity to share information and thoughts and ideas. And so they did that, and they separated and they punished. And when women came together to talk and share, they were accused of different things.
Gossiping.
And gossip
Yes.
became something that was
Yes.
shamed. It was frowned upon. You didn't want to be a gossip because it was such a derogatory
It's a
term.
shameful word.
It
I
is.
don't want to be called a gossip.
No,
Yeah, everybody
no.
says like, oh my gosh, we're not sitting here and gossiping. No, but we are sharing.
We're sharing thoughts, ideas, and information, and that was the origin.
But then do you think there is a fine line? Because in my head, what is a gossip is you're actually sitting there and shredding someone to pieces.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not always the idea. Maybe you're talking about somebody, but it is from a view of either learning from it, helping that person, or I don't know, maybe just working on it.
I was speaking to my friends about this the other day, and we were like, what's the difference? And to me, if you are comfortable looking that person in the eye and saying the same thing to their face that you are saying about them while they're not in the room, then it is fine.
High five for that.
If you have that comfort and you're basically like, hold on, I will say to you, anything I'm going to say about you, I will say to you.
Yes.
I will give you the opportunity to defend yourself. And this is my thoughts and my opinions on this experience. And I will say it to you. If I do not feel comfortable saying something directly to somebody, I have no right to say it to anybody else about them behind their back. Like, that is it. And I say the same thing to my daughters. And I say, like, that is it. If I say anything to somebody and they come back and say, did you say this about me? I know. Yes,
I did.
Yes, I did. And
but
this is
came
why.
From
and this
this
is my experience.
Place, yes.
And this is the context. And if you want to disagree with me, you can. And if you want to change my ideas and everything, I'm open to that. But anything that will say about somebody behind their back, I will say to their face, because my thoughts and opinions do not change depending on who I am stood in front of.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And you know what? Personally, that's taken a little bit of burden off my chest as well, because sometimes you're accused of, oh, you actually spoke behind my back. I did. But this is where I came from, and I can actually stand here and tell you this is what I said.
Yeah, if you're going to come to me and say, hold on, have you been saying this about me behind my back? Yes, but simply because you weren't there when I said it. And I will say the same thing to your face.
Yes.
Because that is my thoughts and my beliefs. And I'm okay. I'm comfortable enough and I'm empowered enough within my thoughts and my decisions and my beliefs and where I'm coming from that I can vocalize that. And if I am wrong, and you come back and you prove me wrong and you clarify why things happen a particular way, and I realize I was wrong, I will say to anybody, I was wrong when I thought that and I believed that, because now I have a new layer of context that I can apply that situation to that I didn't have previously. So that's it.
That's absolutely wonderful. Right. So I'm thinking, is there a shift in this generation?
Yes.
Or did the older generation did not feel it or experience it, or are we the ones who are voicing it?
We are the generation that experienced life before the internet, and the generation that is experiencing life after the internet and social media. So previous generations never had the freedom to research, learn, take on board, or share information to the degree that we do now. Like if you consider like a typical English village and there are 300 people there and everybody knows each other and that kind of idea, when somebody shared their experience, they only had those 300 people to then ask or share or question. And then our generation,
we can reach millions.
Suddenly, the internet comes on board. And we can not only ask the people in the village, the people that we have direct contact to, we now have the opportunity to ask millions of people around the world. And then social media came on. So instead of just asking and sharing with our own people and finding out and staying within our own echo chambers, what we then learned was actually there are a lot of other people, and we can ask so many more people about their thoughts, their experiences, their ideas. So our generation is the bridge. We have experienced both prior to the technology and after the technology. And that means that we've experienced both the silence and living within the limited ideas, and then living where the ideas and the thoughts and everything else can be shared exponentially. So we are the bridge, and we've got to experience both sides. There is a cynicism about the way that the next generation is growing up, because there is a lot of enabling that happens, and there isn't as much kind of the consequences with our actions are not necessarily felt the same way as the previous generations. And I think that there is that difficulty. And I think that's why our generation is the bridge, where we're like, hold on, I know where you're coming from, but I also see what they're experiencing, and I know that like there are nuances on both sides.
That's right. Yeah. And we're ready to make the change, and
Yeah.
we're ready to say, okay, fine. We appreciate what you went through.
Yes.
But you didn't have the access. You didn't have access to all that information. We do.
Yeah.
So why are we not going to utilize it to our advantage?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also appreciating and saying, okay, well, it must have been very difficult for you.
My dad always says that, actually. He's like, in a way, he says he feels sorry for our generation, parenting wise. Like, because you have so much access, your kids have so much access. There is no way you can tell them something they don't know.
Yeah.
They know everything. And that's a challenge of parenting right now, because TikTok's already told them something you want to have a chat about.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, like, TikTok tells me stuff.
TikTok tells me a lot of things as well. But, as a parent, I want to sit and...
I think the problem is with the next generation, and the problem that I'm having with, like, raising my daughters with this is... It is very difficult to trust the information that is being given to you. There is so much falsities. There is so much false information. Everybody, like, the internet has gone from a place of information to a place of sharing false ideas and narratives.
And it can validate anything.
Yeah. And so, no matter what you search for, you will find confirmation of it.
That's it.
And that's very, very difficult to try and get your children to realize that they need to take everything with a pinch of salt. You have to be cynical about a lot of the stuff that you see on the internet.
It's not all real.
Yeah.
It's a hard conversation. It's a hard reality, but they've got to learn to go through it. Yeah,
that it is just a pretense. It is just a show. Even if they put it out there as though it is facts, you have to consider that what they are saying is false.
So one thing you want to tell your viewers about anything, about owning your trauma, owning your story, why you must come and share your stories. Anybody, it could be anywhere, anybody. It's how important it is.
I think it's that realization that sharing your story doesn't have to be done on a podcast.
No.
This is an incredible opportunity, but sharing your story can be done with your friends. It can be done with people that you are close to. When I first shared my story with a friend at a coffee shop, and me talking to her about what I was going through transformed her life. It gave her the idea and belief that she could then leave her abusive husband. And that didn't come from me standing on stage. And like, your story being shared is just as valid if you share it to one person to if you share it to 100 to 1,000. There is no hierarchy of that. But whenever you talk about your experiences, what you are doing is you are letting yourself know that my voice is worth being heard, my experiences are worth being noted, and I am worthy and deserving of allowing others to know my experiences. You don't have to hide in the shadows. You don't have to live behind closed doors. You are worthy and deserving of being heard and accepted, and your truth being put out there however you choose to do it.
Thank you. It was an amazing, amazing conversation. If this conversation resonated with you, please share, please like, and please keep us in this conversation going. See you till next time.